from its vessel. Let strength be granted so the world might be mended. Soul of the lost withdrawn from its vessel. Let strength be granted so the world might be mended. So the world might be mended. This is the Nexus. It holds together the northern land of Boletaria. Thou canst not exit the Nexus, but each of the 5 archstones will connect them to it. come back. The monumental awaits the above. The monumental will explain the nexus to thee. The monumental awaits the above. The monumental will explain the nexus to thee.
We have long awaited you, Slayer of Demons. I am one of the Monumentals. We preserve the fabric of reality. There is something thou needest to know. Once, we too, a scourge of demons faced. In the distant past, under a benevolent rule, the world was united owing to the soul arts. Until a lust for power caused the awakening of the Old One. Across the land seeped a colorless, deep fog, and the world faced extinction at the hands of the demons. Thanks be, we were able to lull the Old One back to his slumber, yet only after the loss of innumerable souls, and half the world lost, erased by the fog. In order to mend the fabric of what land still remained, we entrusted 6 elders with 6 precious archstones. 1 to the king of a small yet diligent land. 1 to the king of the burrowers underground. 1 to the wise queen of the great ivory tower. 1 to the chieftain of lost and ill-fortuned souls. 1 to the shaman of the tempest-worshipping shadowmen. And the last to the great giants of the northern lands. The archstones were placed at nodes across the earth. We contained the Old One inside this nexus and banned the soul arts. Finally, we became monumentals, half-living sentinels of the fabric of reality. Alas, the other monumentals have perished, and only I remain. Now it is your turn. You must lull the Old One back to its slumber, and seal it away for all eternity. If not, the deep fog will absorb all that we know. Have you the strength to accept this mission? Yes, we are fortunate indeed to have you. Now, go forth and destroy every last demon. The Old One, without demons to feed its souls, will a new servant seek and lure you to its bosom.
Brave soul, who fears not death, prithee, Lull the old one back to its ancient slumber. What is it? Dost thou seek soul power? I understand. Pray, forgive me. Perhaps my opinion of you was wrong. I am sorry.